This is a video series dedicated to the albums that made me a music fan, and the albums that I hold as a personal measuring stick to other albums so I can tell what great music is. This video is dedicated to Pearl Jam's debut, 10. If there was a time period I feel I missed out on, it was the grunge days. Last month I talked about who had the best voice in grunge. In the back of my mind while making that video was Pearl Jam's amazing debut album and the impact it had on me. Released on August 27th, 1991, the alternative scene was about to be turned completely on its head with an album that would lead the style of popular music for years. As of now, 10 has sold over 13 million copies in the United States and ranks as one of the best-selling albums in American history. It also doesn't hurt that the singer of Pearl Jam looked like this. It was Stone Gossard, Jeff Ament, and Mike McCready up in the Seattle area who were toiling with new music to make after their respective bands dissolved. After they made a demo tape and it fell into the hands of a relative unknown named Eddie Vedder, Eddie would record his own written vocals over the music and send it back to the creators. That was enough to have Vedder come up from the beach and then be invited to form Pearl Jam. After a ton of recording sessions and constant indecision over separate takes and many mixing issues, they finally had one of the greatest debut albums any band could ever ask for. Pearl Jam is now a household name and an example of sticking together through thick and thin, as well as knowing how to give fans something more with their live bootleg series among their thousands of shows around the world. I was really young when 10 came out, so this video is going to help me go back a little bit. I'll be talking about the songs in general, some of the writing backstory behind the music, and a few personal stories of why I love 10 so much. A lot of what I just said were some key points about the band and some high-level descriptions of the album. The point of talking about my all-time favorite albums, though, is addressing what I love about the music and personal connections with some of it. So in the spirit of grunge, I got some flannel on, a mismatched bandana that does not go with this shirt, and my hair is done as... well, it's not done as anything, it's just my hair. I've come to terms that I'll never be able to do anything normal with it. Let's just talk about 10. As far as opening tracks go, especially on a debut album, Pearl Jam nailed it on how to grab a listener's attention. This is how you introduce your music to someone who just bought your cassette or CD or vinyl. There was nothing really digital back then, so it doesn't work that way. Pearl Jam has a bit of variety in style, and over the years they've shown they can do a lot. Once, I feel, is one of their heaviest songs in the terms of hard rock and grunge. The riffs in the opening, before Vedder even gets out the first vocal bar, have such a good sting. The cymbals are clear and don't go overboard. Then Eddie starts going and you can hear the chorus delivery and it's all just gold. While many people came to know Pearl Jam through the first couple radio singles in 1991 and 92, it's songs like these I appreciate because it's a real introduction to the album, not just a style or a few notes to set the mood. Nothing against intro tracks, but when an album begins with a song that isn't a single and still kicks the door down with it, you know you're in for something special. It's that weird feeling of anticipation where you can tell right away that it's either going to be all great or none of it is. Like taking a sip out of the milk carton. Either it's all good, or it needs to be thrown out right away. I asked on Twitter for a few analogies to make that description, and that was the only one that actually made sense and wasn't vulgar. Thanks. One of the grunge anthems. Even Flow is one of the many 90s alternative songs that people try to sing along with even though they don't know the lyrics. The early 90s had a ton of that.
6 o'clock TV hour.
Written by Eddie Vedder and Stone Gossard, Even Flow is a song about a homeless man trying to stay sane through it all. The lyrics do a good job of describing things in a man's life. This is something that Vedder really looks out for and a subject he's written about several times. Even Flow charted well on Billboard and held its own spot on the air for a long time. It's so grunge radio rock that it's almost cliche. It's hard to really describe if you haven't heard it before without doing an Eddie Vedder impression and failing miserably. The bass and rhythm guitar really drive this low groove that you'd think wouldn't stick out well with a heavy baritone voice, but it comes out great. I admit Even Flow isn't a song I play a ton on my own anymore because it still gets a ton of airplay on alt-rock stations and classic rock as well. This was only the band's second single though. I mean, let's face it, some debut albums have one really good song and then the second radio single is kind of watered down. Meanwhile, you have Pearl Jam who just came out swinging and makes hit after hit. Eddie Vedder is a diehard baseball fan, so I'm hoping some of these baseball analogies eventually get to think of most when I hear someone talk about the band. There was a lot of story behind Alive, and it all goes back to the very beginning of Pearl Jam. The music was written by Stone Gossard back before the band even existed. When Gossard wrote and recorded the music, he long soloed from Mike McCready, who only needed 2 takes to get that entire playthrough recorded in studio. It takes me what feels like a week to make a good bass solo last about 60 seconds that I'm actually satisfied with. Meanwhile, you have this guy who can make a guitar solo stand the test of time after 2 takes. I really should have practiced more. One of the songs that deals with Vedder's discovery of his own biological father. The song is paired with other Pearl Jam tracks to create a part fact, part fiction story about a man finding out about his birth father and going insane. When 10 was released, Alive did not get as much praise as the other songs, but over time it gained the attention it deserved. Part of the reason being that it was played at hundreds of live shows and it would later be listed as having one of the greatest guitar solos ever. My personal love for this album really stems from this song, Alive. My sister, who's 7 years older than me, had this on cassette, and I was really young at the time. She never really listened to it that much though, it was just a CD she bought because it was one of the popular things to do at the time. So, as the years went on, she eventually went to college, and I inherited some of her CD collection and her cassette collection. This was in that box. I had a CD tape combo player in my room at the time, and I played through it, and I liked it, but it wasn't until I started a foundation. I always love the opening of this song. That's it, I just wanted to point that out really quickly. Coming off a high like Alive is difficult, but Why Go really helped speed things along. The music was written by bassist Jeff Ament, and you can definitely hear the strong bass line and percussion sound really carry this track. Hearing the wild guitar solo just after the 2-minute mark takes everything up a notch also. The first 4 tracks of 10 are meant to wake you up. While many other bands at the time couldn't go this far into an album without hitting filler, Pearl Jam makes it look easy. That is a lost art for a lot of bands today. I miss the time where bands would try to release a full album and make it all complete and everything feel like it's a part of their identity. That is a lost art in a lot of bands today. I miss the time where bands would make a complete album and each song felt like it was a part of the band's identity. Instead of now, where a band just tries to release one really good song before the album comes out, and that's it. They just want to get pre-orders. Why Go was dedicated to a girl who, as the story goes, was institutionalized and sent from hospital to hospital because they couldn't figure out what to do with her. In reality, the girl was fine, but the parents insisted something was wrong with her and also demanded that she, quote, get better. Overbearing parents insisting they know best just because they don't like who their child is, and the parents forcing their will. Boy, does that describe a lot of teenage angst in the 90s. As her body was still. The song that many Pearl Jam fans refer to as Eddie Vedder's most memorable performance, Black, has spawned countless covers and is still played on active alt-rock stations and is one of the banner songs on SiriusXM's Lithium. As far as nostalgia goes, this is about as grungy as it gets. Along with getting highlighted for the great MTV Unplugged performance, this song charted very well at the time, even though it was never released as a single. Whether you chalk that up to the band's popularity or the quality of the song, it's still impressive. Growing up when I heard this on the radio, I never thought much of it, probably because I was so young. I mean, it's about relationships too, and when I'm really that little, I'm not going to relate to something on that level. But as I've grown older, I've really come to appreciate it quite a bit. Often I talk about songs like Black having a good build-up where a song starts off slower and low in volume while gradually increasing into something loud to create a big dynamic. It also helps that Black doesn't feel rushed, clocking in at 5 minutes 44 seconds. People talk about ballads and hair metal that really encapsulate the feeling of that generation. I feel like Black does an amazing job at painting the picture of grunge back in the early 90s. Alive is my favorite Pearl Jam song, but Black I feel might be the most identifiable to Pearl Jam, especially to music fans who aren't really into rock, or at least Pearl Jam itself.
And that's for good reason too, because Black really is a strong track that's easily identifiable, that very few people can match no matter how many times it's covered. And also, it's a good thing to be recognized as the creators of the song Black. I mean, come on, would you rather be known as creating the song Black or Who Let the Dogs Out? The original cut of the music video would be edited on MTV and would cut out the scene where he holds the gun and puts it in his mouth.
It's all out in the latter half of this track. I feel this is the best example of 10 of his vocal ability, not Black, to really belt out the long notes and prove how the voice is an instrument. Jeremy had a weird relationship on the charts as it made 2 separate appearances over a long period of time. The music video really helped propel the song, also winning several Video Music Awards and constantly being on many greatest music video of all time lists.
The music video really is worth watching. The song Jeremy is great, but the music video pushes it to the next level. I mean, it's a work of art, it really highlights the points that the song is trying to make, and it really does grab your attention and point out a serious topic. I'm not going to make any jokes about this because this, unfortunately, is a subject that is still going on today and a problem in many people's lives. But I still recommend watching the music video. It's fantastic. There's a link for it in the YouTube cards over here.
Oceans is the first real calming breath in 10 after so much happens in the first half of this album. While Black and Jeremy are very serious songs, Oceans is under 3 minutes and just has some basic strums and vocal breathing, for lack of a better description, of what Eddie Vedder makes his singing sound. It's almost effortless for him. There are 2 descriptions of who this song's lyrics are written about. One is that the song is about surfing, the other is that it's about Vedder's at-the-time girlfriend and eventual wife and ex-wife Beth Liebling.
Either a woman or surfing, one or the other. I'm sure you can make comparisons between the two. You know, nice comparisons, not the ones that get you slapped.
It's quick, it's simple, it was even released as a single eventually. My only complaint is that I wish it would have gone a bit longer. That's a good complaint to make though, and a way you can tell you like what you're hearing.
All the bills go by and the initiatives are taken off by the middle. There ain't gonna be any middle anymore, and the cross.
A song like Porch is one of the reasons why I wish I would have grown up a little older during the grunge days, because it has that energy and anger while still being a fun song. And it was played in Saturday Night Live when SNL had one of its best casts. You know, back when Adam Sandler was consistently funny.
Oh, Eddie Vedder's even better looking in person. Oh yeah.
Porch was a song written solely by Eddie Vedder. I love the placement of this song also because in 10, after so many different styles, and especially after Black and Jeremy, you get a good rock track that moves faster and shocks you back into a better mood than more of their introspective and somber meanings in the previously mentioned songs.
Eddie's vocals, along with those guitar riffs and that bridge, are all just so drenched in the identity of the early 90s. It's hard to really pinpoint certain elements, it all has to be taken in as a whole.
It has a creative bridge to help extend the song, it keeps the energy up, and while keeping the volume level high, it doesn't go over the top like previous generations of rock would do. In an interview, Vedder talks about the meaning behind Porch. It all boils down to, if you love someone, tell them.
There were a lot more love songs in the grunge days than people give credit. It wasn't all just angst and misery. In fact, sometimes love was the cause for that angst and misery. It's just, you know, at least then there's a reason for it.
I can't stress enough how well simple riffs and melodies were established and brought back to light in the days of grunge, and a song like Garden helps illustrate that point. The opening of the song and the verses have that repeated few notes that sets a tone, and the chorus opens up heavy. In some ways, this song feels like a throwback to the 70s with the long-noted chorus that feels like a glorified jam session. This song goes from screaming and deep rips to fading out in the last 30 seconds.
I was in high school when I really started to appreciate songs like this. The songs that would have a heavy rhythm, but then fade out slowly and end so peacefully. That's a very rare thing now with some music. You know, bands don't even experiment with that anymore. But hey, radio format pays the bills, so there you go.
Deep continues from some of the style in Garden, where some of it feels like a jam session, and the wah on the guitar really gives a haze effect. If there was a song that has a ton of meanings and can be interpreted many different ways, it's this one. Lyrically, it's been interpreted from problems in love, to addiction, to religious tones, to whatever other interpretations you can think of. I admit that when I have a craving to hear 10, it's usually not Garden and Deep. They are still solid songs though, and feel like they belong on the album, and you can really hear the talent from both McCready and Gossard. After you listen up to this point in the album, you can also appreciate that everyone in the band is really pulling their own weight.
Whenever people talk about Pearl Jam, they almost always think Eddie Vedder, and that's understandable, but the other men in this band really deserve a lot of credit. They are very talented musicians and just as integral a part of the band as Eddie was.
I love when an album closes on the right note. Finality. The end. Release is that track that signals it's time to take it home. The melody and the high note guitar riffs create a much more calming feeling that was given before in an album with a lot of different emotions. It also helps that it contained the hidden track Master Slave, which added another 5 minutes of peaceful music to bring 10 to an end.
Hidden tracks used to be such a huge deal. I remember when I first heard Dookie and I found the hidden track on the very end of that album, I thought I was lucky, like I had the only copy with this extra little bonus song. That's just how I thought when I was a little kid, you know, when I had my first CD player. You don't really get that anymore with instant downloads and streaming because you can just tell how long the track is. So it's just one of those little fun features that's been lost over time. However, we don't have to stuff a full portable CD player in our pockets anymore. So it's still much better now.
Release is a song that just helps create an atmosphere. You get sucked into the music while you listen. That type of pulse-lowering sound that helps you breathe but also doesn't put you to sleep thanks to Vedder's pipes that still belt out the strong notes. Marking the only song on 10 that was written by the entire band together, Release is a hard one to really describe just talking about it. That's the peaceful end to everything. Hearing Release Me like it's being shouted from far away just has an impact on you. And then when the fade out of Master Slave that continues to the beginning of Once, it's like a full rotation.
And that might be the main reason why so many people connect to 10. There is so much replay value in this album that you'll eventually never be able to remember how many times you've gone back to it throughout the years, just to hear it again and again. On Regretting the Past videos, I make comparisons about how many copies an album has sold, but it's no wonder the 10 has sold so well and continues to stand as a testament to a time period in rock. Pearl Jam is a band that also evolves every few years. Albums like Yield, Binaural, and even Lightning Bolts all don't resemble the style of 10. Many people have their own favorite grunge band from the early 90s, and along with that, their favorite album. It's an interesting situation I'm in because while Pearl Jam really isn't one of my favorite bands ever across the years, 10 still is one of my favorite albums. It offers everything I'm looking for in an album, and then some. This album had a lot of problems in the studio, and according to Ament, this album was just a reason to start touring and get attention on the road. I really don't think Pearl Jam realized the standard they would set here. It's been 17 years now since we've had this icon of a music debut. Here's hoping we can get more genre-leading and attention-grabbing albums from new bands today, just like we had back in 1991. Thank you for watching and hearing me talk about one of my favorite albums. What do you think about 10 and Pearl Jam? Leave a comment and let people know. Big thanks to my patrons for helping to support these videos being made. If you want to help support Rocked, you can check out my Patreon by clicking the YouTube card or the link in the description below. Please subscribe so you get notified of next month's Regretting the Past video. You can check out my concert photography on Instagram, and you can keep up to date with Rocked on Facebook and Twitter.